This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Any questions, guys? Anyone? Any questions that I can take till here? Any questions? Any questions that for me? Any questions that I can take till here that I need to address or something that you're not getting? Anything as such?
Good morning, sir. Madhu here, sir.
Good, Madhu. Good morning.
Sir, I have a small doubt, sir.
Good, please.
While creating virtual networks, it's a regional specific, right?
Correct.
So, if I want to create virtual network using some address space, let's say 10.0.0 by 16,
Okay.
so we cannot use the same address space for creating some other network because it's overlaps, right?
It overlaps, but Microsoft allows you to create it. So here's the concept. So, for example, let's say you have a virtual network here with 10.0.0.0. So we'll also check that out. So 10.0.0.0/16. Okay. And you have one more, or you want to create one more network with the same address space,
Mm-hmm.
something like 10.0.0.0/16, and two are two different regions. Okay. Two are in two different regions. Now, Microsoft will allow you to create this. So it will tell, okay, fine, this is a different network, this is a different network, because see, when you create a virtual network, right, very importantly, what really happens is this. Let's look at a virtual network. If I go inside a virtual network out here, and sorry, if I go inside a virtual network here, I get the properties of the network, and I get something known as a resource GUID. So this resource GUID, right, it will become unique for each and every network out here. So if you create this network and this network, both the networks are differentiated by this particular thing called as a as a resource GUID out here as such. So here you have a different resource GUID. Here you have a different resource GUID. So based upon this, you will have an isolation, or based upon this, Microsoft is going to tell that virtual network A is different from virtual network B, though the addresses are the same. But one downside out here is that Microsoft gives you a warning telling that if you go ahead and do this, you cannot peer virtual network 1 with virtual network 2. There is something called virtual network to virtual network peering, which we'll talk about. It's nothing but connecting two different networks out here. You cannot peer if the network has overlapping address spaces. So this is the concept what Microsoft really talks about. So yes, you can create it, but it becomes an issue when you want to connect these both networks, let's say in future.
So we
Let's say
can create in the same region. We can create, right?
in the same region you can create, in a different region also you can create.
Okay, okay. Yes, sir, and one more small doubt. Sir,
Good,
after
please.
creating a machine, virtual machine, sometimes if
Okay,
I forgot some any reason, I mean, for password or something, so how can we
okay,
recover this? Is it possible or not?
sure, it is possible. So the thing here is that if you go into a virtual machine again, to recover a password is something is not possible. To reset a password, it is possible, yes. So if you go into the VM, right, and just search for reset, something called reset password. So here you can just click here, and here, basically it's telling the VM must access and all that stuff. This is good enough, not a problem, because the VM is not running right now. We'll talk about that. Here you have something called reset password. What you can do here is that you can give a unique username. It doesn't has to be the username that you have created while, or I mean, it doesn't has to be the username which you have given while created the machine. It can be a different username. So you can give something like test user one. You can give a password, confirm password, say update. So once you do this, your password or your username will get updated, and you can use that in order to, let's say, do the RDP session out there as such.
Okay, thank you. And if we forgot the username also, there is no option. Means we cannot
Even if
do
you
that.
forget the username, that is fine, not a problem. You can give a different username. That's what I was telling.
Okay, okay.
You can
Here we
give a
can give the
different,
right.
yes, you can give a different
Okay,
username here.
Without deleting virtual machine, we can
Without
update here.
deleting the virtual machine, you can update there. I'll also show you
Thank
that once we create the machine. Yes.
thank you so much, sir. That's it, my
So,
points.
Suresh Teja here.
Good, Teja.
We have created a user right now. So
Mm-hmm.
where we see that in our virtual machine, like in the overview, list of the users, where we can say the list of the users.
Sure, I'll show you that too. So firstly, since this is a Linux machine, so this is a Linux machine that I'm working on. So I'll create a Windows machine and I'll show you where we can see the list of the users that you have out there.
Okay, in the under virtual machines, for example, if you see virtual networks or virtual machine, we can see the resource groups. Like
Hmm.
how the can't we see the users who I meant to say which we have created in the
No,
virtual machine?
no, you
No.
cannot see it on the virtual machine. You have to go inside the operating system of the machine. So very importantly, users are OS specific. So you'll have
Uh-huh.
to go inside the machine and you'll have to see the users inside the machine out there as such. So I'll show that to you as well out here as
Okay,
well.
okay. I wanted to know that. Okay,
Mhm.
I'll wait for that moment. Okay, thank you.
Sure, I will create a machine right now and I'll show you the same thing out there as such.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. Is anyone any more questions, guys? All right, so let's recreate a machine today. So again, I'll just go ahead create a new resource group and let's go ahead and say that this is a demo RG and this is ECS2. I'll say we can create this out, and once reviewed and create, I'll just go here, say create. I'll look for virtual machines, or I'll just click here, say virtual machines out here, create new machine, and I'll just go ahead say create new. Sorry, I'll just go ahead use the existing demo RG. I'll say this is a demo VM, ECS2 and etc. I'm leaving all these options as ECS2, no redundancy infrastructure required. I'll just go ahead. This is Windows Server 2019 data center. I'll say the size here is just let's say two virtual core CPUs and 8 GB. So today's topics are going to be a couple of things, which is how do you resize a machine? Like how do you adjust the size, state of a VM, and yes, of course, users inside the VM out here. So let's look at that. So let's scroll down. I'll say this is just user. Say Microsoft 001. Okay, I entered a wrong password. Let me enter it once again. I'll retype the same password, Microsoft -001. Once this is matches, I'll just go ahead open the port called HTTP HTTPS, and whenever I give some rules here, all these rules will go ahead and sit inside something called as the NSG rule block, Network Security Group Rules, NSG rules. This is where the rules will be, let's say binded to. This is what the rules will be binded to. So I'll just scroll down, see next disks, and here I am just going for a premium SSD disk, just the OS disk. I will also show you once, I'll also show you all once you create a disk, how do you attach new disks to it and what do you do and all that stuff. So I'll just go ahead for now. I'll select the OS disk. I'll say next networking, and Microsoft will kind of see if there's any existing network. If it's not, we'll just go ahead and let's say tell that okay fine, I'll create a new network. I'll say okay fine, this is good enough. I'll have a new network created. I'll say management. I can shut down the I can disable the auto shutdown schedule out here. I'll say next monitoring. I'll just disable the monitoring for now. I'll also should tell you all what exactly a monitoring really does out here and why do we need that and all that stuff. I'll say advanced tags, review and create this out. So let me go ahead and hit the create button. And once it's created, let's look into a couple of things out here. Firstly, I'll start with this, a couple of questions there. Firstly, I'll see how do you reset the password. So there's something that I'll just show you in a very quick spell. Then adjusting the size of the machine, on how do you, let's say, adjust the machine size and etc. There's something called as a state of a machine, and then there is a question about the users. How do I check the users inside the machine out here as such? So I'll just show a couple of things out here as such. And in tomorrow's session, we'll start with high availability. Since it's Sunday, there are a little less crowd than the usual, so I don't want to, let's say, cover a very important topic when people are not present. So on the next class, which is tomorrow on Monday, I'll just go ahead and start with high availability concept out here as such, so that every one of y'all can be comfortable with, let's say, things in the virtual machine and all these things out here as such. So let's wait for the machine to be created, and once the machine is getting created, let's check out a couple of concepts out here as such. Is any questions until then? Anyone? Any more questions until then?
Sir, sorry to interrupt
Mhm.
you. Again, I have
Good
one more
question.
some other.
No
Yes, sir.
problem. Go ahead, please. Mhm.
If we use, if we create a virtual network using address space, let's say 10.0 by 16 means it will give 65,536.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So what if the number of resources, instances are created or secured inside this virtual network crossed that number? We can again add that range to the address range to the existing virtual network, or we can recreate it, delete and recreate.
You again, if you delete and recreate it, firstly, Microsoft will not allow you to delete it if provided your subnets already have resources out there.
Yes,
So
yes,
you can do either one thing. You can create a new network with a different space, attach both of them, and that is okay. Like that's
okay.
super okay. Or you can add new address space to, let's say, the existing network. So anything is
Okay.
okay out
We
there.
can add adding option is available, right, sir? Existing.
Adding option is also available, correct.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Again, I have not seen that number crossing because see, each and every subscription will have its own limit. Like for example, in my subscription, right, the maximum storage accounts that I can create are 250. That's the maximum that Microsoft gives you per subscription. There's something called subscription quotas also. So when
Okay,
you
okay,
go
sir.
ahead and create resources, right, you will have to stick to those quotas out there. So that's something that we have to just keep in mind out there as such.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So let's go into the demo RG and let's check this out. Now I have the VNet, I have the virtual machine, the IP, the NSG, the NIC card, the disk, and etc. And if I go into the VM, now imagine that I forgot my password. I forgot my ID and the password out here as such. I'll say reset password. And very importantly, to reset a password, you will have to make sure that the machine is running. If the machine is stopped, you cannot reset the password. You have to make sure the machine is started. So here you have to click on the button called start the machine out here, get it to a running state, and then go ahead and reset this out. Let's say something like test user, and I'll give a different password called Microsoft 002 this thing. Or I can also say dummy user or something like that. I'll say update. So what this does is that this now resets the password, creates a user called dummy user, and adds a password for that particular dummy user out there. And now it says, okay, fine, you know what, I'll reset the entire password for this particular user. Will take around 1 or 2 minutes to do this particular operation. And once this is done, you can go ahead and log in with this particular user with that particular password that you have set out here as such. So just in case if you forget the password, you can come here, reset it out using this particular tab called reset password out here as such. So that's the thing. So let me give it a minute, and let me also show you how it really looks like and how can I really log into the machine using this, let's say, dummy user out here. And let's give it a second. Let's wait for this one to load. Again, any operation that you do on a virtual machine, right, it will take like about a minute or two. So that's the reason, class will become a little slow when you go ahead and do a virtual machine concepts out there. I need to wait for a minute or so for the password to get reset and all that stuff. So let's give it a minute and let's check this out. And once this is done, let's log into the machine. And until then, I won't be able to do any operation on this particular machine out here as such. But yes, let's redo the diagram until then so that everyone is on the same page. Again, when you create a machine, this is what you have. You have a virtual network, you have a subnet inside the virtual network. As in, when you do that, you have a network isolation. You get your own space, you'll get your own private space out here. And once this is done, you have two more components that is getting created, which is the NSG rules, network security group rules. And then we have a public IP address that's getting created because I want my virtual machine to be accessible over the internet. So both of them, network security group rules and public IP, are getting, let's say, attached out here. Then most important component, the NIC card is getting attached. Sorry, the NIC card will get attached. NIC card will get attached to both your subnet and your public IP address, taking a public and a private IP, and then your virtual machine is going to get created. And once your VM is created, you'll have a disk that is attached to your VM. Okay, let's see, where is disk? Okay, disk that is attached to your VM out here as such. Again, this doesn't stop you to go ahead and attach a disk after the machine is created. So you can do that, and I'll also show you that. And also, the password got reset. Took around a minute. Now let me go ahead, use that particular public IP address and do an remote desktop connection. And now I'll say this is a dummy user. I'll say give the password, and now it's allowing me to go ahead and log in out here as such. So in case you forget your password, this is how you can go ahead and reset it out. You'll get the admin credentials, and very simple, you can reset it and re-log in inside the machine out here as such. And I'll also show you where the users are present. That's something that I'll do once the machine starts out. So Teja, just a heads up, you wanted to see this, I'll kind of show you where do you want to see the users and how do you add the users and all these things out here.
Okay, so inside the RDP, we will do, we can see that, right? Not in the Azure portal.
No, you cannot see it in the Azure portal. This is a Windows machine, or this is a machine, right? So
Okay,
the users who can access the machine are OS specific, operating system specific out here.
okay.
So very
So
importantly, you'll have to come inside the machine and only then see that.
okay, so in that case, we need to go into the my computer and program files, users, where we can see the users over there, right?
Not really. There's another way in which you can, kind of do that. So I'll
Okay.
show you. There is something
Oh,
called as computer management. So there's
okay.
something known as computer management out here. That's where we normally go ahead and see the users out there as such. And
Okay.
allow me
And in
to,
the
yeah. Mhm.
yeah, in the meantime, where your diagrams, I mean, to say the architecture shows with you, you are showing with the logos and everything, which is pretty much clear and understandable. But where
Mhm.
I've started working now, they are just going with the process of flow maps without any diagrams, like,
Mhm.
just, usually the process flow maps will be right within a square,
Correct.
rectangles and diamonds. It is
Mhm.
going with that. So it is taking time for me to understand the architecture thing for the
Okay.
live environment. So
See again. Mhm.
usually
Got
how
it.
it will be? Will it be through diagrams or will it be only a process map with a general process map?
See, it completely depends upon where you're working and under whom you're working and all that stuff, and how the company is literally, or how the company is, let's say, giving your knowledge transfer sessions out there. see, I worked with companies which just had, let's say, simple Word documents, and I've just read the Word documents and I've created my own diagrams. Because see, one thing that I believe is that, if you read something, I'll forget it very easily. But if I, draw something, it's pictorial for me, and it'll be imprinted in my brain for a long time. So that's the reason I do a lot of diagrams out there. So what I would suggest
Okay.
is you can start using this. It's a free tool, right? So you can just go to draw.io. You can take your own icons, and depending upon what is your understanding, you can go ahead and put your own diagrams out there. In that way,
Okay.
you will be able to, let's say, retain the subject for a longer period of time.
Okay. Got it. I'll try to do it from tomorrow, by
Sure,
seeing the. Thank you so much.
no problem. So now I'm here inside the machine. So if I want to see the users that are there as part of this machine, I don't know why this is terribly slow. Let's give it a second to boot up. All right. So let me do a control R to run some command out here, and I will go into something called COMP MGMT management dot MSC. Let me see if I got the spelling right. So it's called computer management dot MSC. So comp MGMT management dot MSC. That is a service. So once that loads out, I don't know why this is super slow today. Once that loads out, we'll also see what are or where you can see the users and all these things out. So let me wait for this to load.
Hi, sir.
Good, please.
Yeah, in that draw.io, in that flowchart, I don't see that Azure related icons and all. Can
This is
you?
something that I have downloaded. For example,
Oh,
so what you can do is that you can say more shapes, add this out, just scroll down, and in the cloud you have something called Azure, right? So you'll have to just click
yeah,
this out and say apply. And
okay,
also these are my own icons. Like I have downloaded all these icons out here. So if you can just go ahead and search for Azure icons,
okay,
.io also you can say elaborately like this. You can get all these icons out here. You have the GitHub pack icons, so they'll tell you how to use these icons and all that stuff. So you can just
okay,
download these particular icons and put them inside your, let's say, Azure Gallery again. Let's see if I have something that I can tell you. Yes, something like this. This is something that I did. Yeah. So there are a couple of articles that will help you explain how do you go ahead and do that. So I have all these icons that are downloaded. So if I just look at this one in my computer, these are
oh,
all the Azure icons that I have downloaded. So all these are, let's say, PNG icons that I downloaded. And once I downloaded it, right, I just copied all of them and I pasted it inside this particular thing called as a scratchpad. So you can add multiple
okay,
things out here from your, let's say, you can add multiple things out here from your machine, local machine out here as such. And that's
oh,
how, I have all these icons in place.
okay, okay. Thank you.
All right. So coming back to the machine. So I have two instances of scene. Okay, fine. I'm now into something called computer management. And inside computer management, I have this one called local users and groups. And once inside this one, you have users. And here, if you see, I have a test user earlier that got created. So test user is still a part of it. I have something called as a dummy user. I can go ahead and add a new users as well in here. I can go ahead and say what is the username, what is the password, what is the full descriptions and all that stuff. And once you add it here, the user will be able to log in or using that particular credentials. And you can see the same thing in groups. Under groups, there is something called administration group. And if I double click and open this out, as you see, both these users are administrators. Demo user and dummy user are administrators. I can re-add someone, like provided the user is already existing. I can add the particular user firstly. So firstly, I need to go into users. I need to add a particular user, say something like sample account. I'll say the full name is sample. I can give a password here. I'll say create. So I can go ahead and give all these things. So once that's done, if you refresh this out, I have a sample account out here. I can go into the groups I can add this particular sample account into the administrator group out here. So I'll say sample account, check names. It's now going to tell that, okay, fine, this is the VM and this is, let's say, the account name. I'll say add, I'll say apply. Now I can literally take that particular sample account, the password that I've assigned to that sample account, and re-log into the machine. Like I can establish a new RDP session using that particular thing out here. So whenever you do, or whenever you want to add users, it's you have to go inside something called computer management.msc, and once inside the service, Azure, or let's say any virtual machine which is of a Windows class, will allow you to go ahead and add users inside the users of the groups out there as such. Okay, does this answer your question? And was this your question out here, and does it answer it?
Thank you, Suresh.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's come back and let's check this out. So I have a machine, and the first thing that I did is okay. Teja, can you please go on mute? I'm getting a little bit echo. Thank you. All right. So I have a machine. I reset the password. Let's see one thing. See, I have a machine with a 2 virtual core CPU and an 8 GB RAM. So this is what I really created. Let's say for some reason this capacity is not really sufficient. For example, if you see today, the machine is too slow. The 2 GB RAM is, or the 8 GB RAM is not really sufficient. The 2 virtual core CPUs are not really sufficient out here. So what I want to do is I want to scale the size up. I want to do a scale up, which simply means that, please increase the size. Scale down is decrease the size. So scale up and scale down, two different terminologies that I'm using out here. So what I'll do, I'll say, okay, fine, I want to scale up my size. So I'll just scroll down. There's something called size out here. I'll say size. And as of now, I'm using a 2 virtual core CPUs and an 8 GB RAM. Let's say that I don't want this. I want a 4 GB RAM, let's say a 4 core CPUs and a 16 GB RAM out here. So firstly, what I'll do, I'll disconnect the RDP session, because if I do it with the RDP session, chances are the machine will get corrupted. So I'll click on this particular size. I'll say resize. As and when I do this, now, okay, fine. It's telling machine is, let's say, failed and all that stuff. Now it's telling, let's check this out. So let's check the error out. So it's saying failed to resize the machine to the size error. Virtual machine has this particular size, which is not compatible with, let's say, accelerated networking on the VM. Compatible sizes are these things: standard D24, all these things out here. So there also is a limitation. You cannot go ahead and size it to or resize it to anything out there. For example, let's see what is the size that is available for me. It's a standard D2V4. D2V4. Let's see if I have something like that. D2V4. Okay, D2V2 is something that I have. Let's see what are the other series of machines that I do have out here. Do I have a D2V3? DS3V2? Yes, DS3V2 is available. So I can click here and I can try this out. DS2V3, and I can try to resize this out here as such. So again, when you create a machine, there are a lot of things that actually get created along the part of this particular machine. There are a couple of sizes which don't support the current configuration of your machine out there as such. So all you do, just try to resize it out. The error is pretty evident, telling that what are the sizes that you can resize this out to. You can pick up one size the way I did today. So I understood what is the size that is available, what is the size that I can really resize it to, and I'm matching it out to the configuration. I want 4 cores. I want around more than 12 GB of, let's say, memory. I said, okay, fine, go ahead, pick the size, resize this out as such out here as such. So I just did this, and again, once I do this, the machine size will be adjusted, and internally the machine is going to get restarted. Took around a minute. Now let's see. Let's go back into the overview, and you still see the same old size. Just refresh the screen out. Refresh it out a couple of times, and let's see this. Again, this will take some time to get updated, and now I see the new size. So once you do a hard refresh of your browser, I have now a new size of the machine with 4 core CPUs and 14 GB memory, more than what I had earlier out here as such. So this is how you can do a resize of the machine. So just you need to go into the resize tab or the size tab out here, and just click on, let's say, telling that, okay, fine, you know what, I need this particular size, or I want to scale it down. So again, depending upon the size, you're charged. Depending upon the size that you go for example, I'm now in this particular size. which is going to cost me around 12,000 rupees per month if I keep it running out here as such. You also have machines which will cost you as small as, let's say, 546 rupees per month and something like that, and as high as, let's say, lakhs of rupees per month out here as such as well. Yes, any questions that I can take till here? Anyone? Any questions that I can take till here? All right, so let's come and let's look at this one. Now, this is one of the most important concepts out here when you sit for an interview, is that the interviewer is just going to tell you or just going to ask you, what do you know about the status of a VM? Or what do you know about the state of a virtual machine? In that case, it's just asking you, what are all the different kind of statuses, or what are all the different kind of, let's say, messages that you find here? That's where status of a machine comes into picture. See, there are three different statuses of a machine. One is running, second is stopped, third is deallocated. What do you really mean by this? Let's start with running. One of the most simplest states out here is that it simply tells that your machine is running, and when your machine is running, you are going to be charged somewhere around, let's say, 12 rupees per an hour. Now, the 12 rupees hour cost that you are paying is not only for your machine. You are paying for things like the operating system licensing, the public IP addresses, things like the underlying infrastructure, the RAM, the memory, and all that stuff. Infrastructure is the major cost. Then you have your disk, your NIC cards, your components, all those things, they come into picture. So it's not only just the VM that you're paying. Inside the VM, you're paying for all these internal components like the OS, the public IPs, the underlying infrastructure, the disks, and all that stuff out here. Now, if I want to stop the machine, what I'll do, I'll copy this, let's say, public IP out here. I'll use MSTSC. The dummy user is good enough. I'll try to relog into the machine. And once I logged into the machine, I'll just go ahead and shut down the machine from the operating system out here. Again, since I resize this out, it'll take some time to apply all these policies and all that stuff, and it'll try to load the operating system. And what I'll do here is, once I log into the machine, I'll just click on, let's say, the left hand corner of the panel, and just like how you shut down your laptop, I'll go ahead and shut down the machine. So I'll do that right away. Let's give it a second to load this out. All right, I'll come here. I'll just shut it down. And once I hit the shutdown button, it's going to ask me, what kind of shutdown is it? Is it a planned activity and etc.? I'll say yes, planned. I'll say continue. And what this does is that, as a simple machine, like, when you shut down your laptop, what you're going to get, this is the kind of, let's say, thing that you're going to get out here. And the same thing, the virtual machine is also giving you the same status, and the machine is now shut down. So let's refresh the screen and let's see what is the status of the machine. Well, the status of the machine is telling that the VM is stopping. So let's wait for a couple of minutes, and now the VM is gone into a stopped state. That is the second state that I'm talking about, is a stopped state out here. Okay. Stop state and deallocated, two different things out here. See, when you stop a machine, it's evident that the machine is not running. Does it mean that you're not paying for anything? No, not really. There is something called as a reservation cost that kicks in. What do I mean by that is this. See, when you create a virtual machine, right? I created a virtual machine region called East US 2. which means that there is some physical server in one of the data centers in Azure in the region called ECS2, and on this particular physical server is where I got my virtual machine provided. So on top of this particular physical server, the virtual machine is running. So whenever I'm saying that, okay, fine, the virtual machine is processing your request or the virtual machine is processing something, it will go back into the physical server, use the underlying hardware of the physical server over the internet, and then go ahead and process all these things out here. When the machine is running, you are charged for the underlying physical server, the operating system licensing, the disks, the NIC card, the public IP, all these things out here. But when the machine is in a stopped state, how did I make the machine a stop state? Went inside the machine, clicked on shutdown, machine went into a stop state out here right now. When the machine is on a stop state, Microsoft will tell you, okay, fine, you stopped it, but the hardware, right? The backend running hardware, they will still go ahead and reserve this for you. They'll say, okay, fine, when you wish to start the machine once again, and again, how do you start the machine? Very simple, go to the Azure portal, click on the start button. So they say, okay, fine, if you want to start the machine, we will allocate the same hardware for you, the same RAM, the same hardware, the same server for you out here as such, which means that if I want to do this, there is a cost that you have to pay, which means you're reserving your hardware. You're telling, okay, fine, you know what, don't give it to anyone else. I will come and let's say again, I'll use the same hardware out here, but Microsoft will say, okay, fine, no problem, not a problem at all, but please pay the cost for this. So even if the machine is, let's say, not running, you will still have to pay some amount of cost. Not definitely 12 rupees, but let's say somewhere around 6 rupees, half the amount. Telling that, okay, fine, you know what, I have to pay so much of amount out here as such out here. That is a stopped state. Let's say you want to avoid this reservation cost. You don't want, you want to tell Microsoft that, you know what, Microsoft, I don't want to pay 6 rupees when my machine is stopped because I am not doing anything out here. I'm not using my machine anything out here as such. So Microsoft says, okay, fine, no problem. I will make sure that I break the link between your virtual machine and the physical hard drive or let's say the physical server out here, which means I'll de-reserve it. I'll de-reserve it. Later, this particular physical server can be given to any other virtual machine, different virtual machine. Let's say you are creating a virtual machine, you de-reserved it. When I create a virtual machine in a different tenant, Microsoft can go ahead and recycle the underlying, let's say recycle the underlying server and allocate it to, let's say, my virtual machine as a part of a different tenant, as a part of a different subscription, not a problem. When you de-reserve it, the cost that you pay for the underlying infrastructure is zero. You don't really pay anything for the underlying infrastructure out here. And how do you de-reserve it? If you want to de-reserve it, you have to deallocate at your end. That's the third state of the machine, which is deallocated. And how do I deallocate it? Very simple. Come into the portal and you have to hit the stop button on the Azure portal out here. It says, do you really want to stop this machine? I'll say, yes, please go ahead and stop this out. When you're stopping, Microsoft will first try to break the link between the underlying server and the machine and make sure to de-reserve it at their end. So now if you refresh this out, it's now going into a state called deallocating. It will take some time for deallocation. Stop was very simple. You just go ahead inside the machine, shut it down. Stop was pretty simple out here. It just went ahead, moved it into a stop state. But now you are into a status called stopped bracket deallocated. Saying, okay, fine, the machine is deallocated out here, but I know what is your configuration. I know what kind of a, let's say, configuration that you have. 4 GB, I mean, the 4 core CPU, 14 GB RAM. I've understood all these things out, but it is deallocated as at this point. And if you want to reallocate it, you now have to click a button called start. Now, when you click a button called,
Hi,
just a second,
sorry to
let me
disturb you.
finish. No, no, let me a second. Let me
Okay.
finish. Okay. When you now start the machine back again, hit the start button, and now what Microsoft is going to do? is that Microsoft is going to, let's say, go ahead and search for a server. It's going to search for a server in a data center called ECS2, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get the same server back again. Let's say the same server back again out here. So it's going to search for the server, then allocate the server for you. This is going to take some time, 2 to 3 minutes. This is called as a cold start condition, which means that the machine from a deallocated state to a running state, it will take or it will give you some time to start it out, which is now called as a cold start condition out here. Why do we call it a cold start? Very simple. Just take your bikes or a car in a cold winter morning. It'll take some time to start, right? The engine has to get heated up. Same way, machine also needs some time to go ahead and get started. That happens when you have the machine in a deallocated state out here as such. But in a deallocated state, you can avoid the complete infrastructure cost. In a stopped state, you will still sorry, you will still end up paying some amount of charge to your machine out there as such. Yes, I'm now open to take questions. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Uh, just now you have delocated the machine. So where
mhm.
is the data will go if we have any data in that machine?
The data in the machine is stored outside the machine, not inside the machine. When I say outside the machine, that's where your disk is going to come into picture. You have this one, which is a separate resource. All your data is intact. It's inside the disk of the machine. So when you reallocate it back again, this machine will just go and attach to that particular drive, pull all the data from here, and then start working. That's the reason Microsoft has decoupled it. There's something called as decoupling out here between the machine and the disk out here as such.
I have another question.
Hmm.
Virtual machine you created, right? So what if user needed two monitors to work with? So how we'll do that?
When you say user
While
needs two
creating virtual,
monitors to work with, okay.
yeah.
When you
While
say
creating
two
virtual
monitors
machine,
to
there is any.
okay.
Let me complete. We have any options how many monitors do we need? We need to select or we can take it. Why? Because
When you
I'm working with organization, so I'm using two monitors. So I'm taking two monitors. That's what I'm asking.
That's fine, sir. I mean, you can take any number of monitors, not a problem. You don't have to select what are the number of monitors out here. I mean, when you create an operating system, or when you, let's say, simple, when you go and install an operating system out here, do you tell in your local laptop what is the number of monitors? No? Yes?
No.
Very simple. If you connect yourself, or if you connect your, sorry, if you connect your machine to an external monitor, you'll have things like project, display, extend, and all that stuff. Normally, what you do, if you have an external monitor, you'll just drag this out, take it to that particular monitor, right? In my case, it's not going because I'm not connected to an external monitor right now. But if you just drag this out, it'll go into an external monitor out there, and you can see this particular screen on an external monitor. Correct?
Yes.
Same way, your RDP is nothing but a session. You can simply take the RDP session, throw it into an external monitor, and then start working there. So it's not the virtual machine that has two monitors. It is what you do basically will put the virtual machine in a different monitor. Again, very simple. A virtual machine is nothing but an RDP session that is running on your system. It's just like any other application, like a tab. You can take the tab, throw it into a different monitor, and you can start working with that. Does it answer your question?
Yes.
All right. Any more questions, here, guys? Anyone? Any more
Yes,
questions out here? Good,
sir.
please.
That cost is
Suresh?
there, sir. 12 rupees something.
Hmm.
So
That's
it
correct.
varies from region, right?
Yes, that's correct. It varies from one region to the other.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Any more questions, here, guys?
Suresh,
Good, please.
uh, You just showed like, in the RDP where we see the username and groups.
Mhm.
What was it? Is it a configuration
So
management?
it's called computer management.
Computer management.
COMPMGMT.MSC.
Sorry, can you
That's
type it?
I did type it, so you can just check this out.
I'm going to say in the word in the notepad so that it will be visible clearly.
That's fine. I've already put this in chat, and also if you see my screen, this is what it
Yeah.
is. It's computer
Computer
management.
management.
Just go and do a search. In your local machine, you will get this out, but you won't get the users and let's say this one in a Windows Home, but in a Windows Server, once you do a computer management, you will get all these things out here.
Okay, got it. And while we are creating this virtual machine, we don't get really the public IP, right?
Uh, if you say none, you won't get a public IP. But if you go ahead and say that you need a public IP, the public IP is also going to get created out there.
Okay, so the other user, I mean to say, my manager created a virtual machine with a none. So later,
Hmm.
she gave me a virtual machine, I mean, stating, Teja, you create your own IP with your system
Hmm.
and log into the RDP. In that
Hmm.
case, what we do?
No, not the own IP probably. It will not be an own IP. It will just be one particular IP that all the users will get connected to. I'm sure it's not
Usually we will connect with our public IP only, right, to RDP.
in an organization when you're working. No, you will need a VPN to be established to the machine. And if your organization is okay to connect with the public IP, then yes, you can connect a public IP and attach it to the machine and then go ahead and let's say do your operation.
Okay. So because recently even I have learned that new step, clicking on the, new opening new tab, my IP, I'm searching for the my IP and whatever the my IP comes in, I'm taking that and putting on the network tab in the virtual networks. I am
Mhm.
adding it. I am adding it. Then after my public IP is allocated to the that particular virtual machine, where then
Okay.
after I'm going copying that public IP and going log into the RDP. That's where
Okay.
I have learned. So just want to check. Uh,
Not really. Again, what you're doing is that you're whitelisting your IP, not creating a new IP. You're doing something called IP whitelisting. So what you're doing is that you're going into
oh,
the network tab of the machine
yeah,
and you're adding your, let's say, yourself out there. So this is where you're adding it. So which means that you're adding yourself into the NSG rules.
right. I'm clicking on RDP and where it pop-ups the,
Yes. The tab you're going ahead and adding your, let's say,
right, right. I
your
am
source
in
code
the destination. Yeah, on the port, I'm giving the IP.
IP out here. Right.
Yeah.
So in the you're here, you're giving the IP. So you're just whitelisting yourself. You're just telling that okay, fine,
Okay.
using this particular public IP, I'm allowed to go ahead and access this out there.
Okay. So why we use this? Any particular reason or
It's just that I mean, it's just that you're allowing yourself. That's it. So this
okay.
is again NSGs. Why we use an NSG? Just go back to the yesterday session on why we use the NSG and how do you add NSGs out there and etc.
Okay. Fine. Thank you so much.
No problem. Any more questions, guys, before I close? All right. Thank you and have a good day ahead, guys. We'll meet tomorrow and we will start with the offline classes tomorrow. It's only Saturday and Sunday where I normally prefer taking the online. So we will have the offline come online tomorrow as such. Thanks, guys.
Suresh, do you have 8 o'clock class as well now?
Yes, we have the 8 o'clock class as well.
Oh, I thought if you don't have, I can stay back for a moment and I can connect on the yesterday's topic where I was asking, how do we
Hmm.
create bookmarks before we launch into what we call the
That
RDP.
is something that I still have to see because that is user specific. So I'll have to do a little bit of digging into it to understand what
Okay.
exactly is the requirement, and I can then tell you.
Okay, I thought of sending you an email, but okay, I'll try to do it. Send an email
Sure,
to you today.
sure. Don't try, send it across. Thank you.
Thanks, sure, I will. Yeah,
Sure. Thank you.
thank you.